move to the next segment of our program. The candidates we have are running for the Kansas State Board of Education. Our first candidate will be Janet Waugh, who is the Democrat incumbent. She will have 2 minutes for opening remarks. Janet?
Thank you, and thank you for hosting this tonight. My name, as he said, is Janet Waugh, and I am running for re-election to the Kansas Board of Education. It's my honor and privilege to serve in this position for 20 years. Prior to this, I served on the Turner School Board, and I've been involved in schools, youth, and community activities for over 40 years. But I'm truly passionate about education. That's the one that I always go to, the one that I believe so strongly about, because in my opinion, education is the #1 economic development tool we have in Kansas. Because I've visited I've been to many chambers, I've visited with many businesses, and they've all informed me that businesses move to Kansas because of our educational system. Because we can provide them with an educated workforce, and we can provide their children with their employees' children with a great education. And frankly, we rank in the top 10 nationally in almost every category in education, and I'm very proud of that. And I think we want to continue that, and right now we've established a new vision in Kansas. Kansans can lead the world in the success of each student, and it's a whole new day in Kansas. I'm really excited about this. Our teachers and administrators and communities are excited. Before we developed this vision, we went all over the state, touring the state, asking people, what do you want in the educational system? And that's how we came up with this new vision. When the federal government did away with No Child Left Behind, which measured schools then by one test on one day, thank goodness they did away with it, because frankly, it wasn't working, because there's so much more involved in educating a student. And our Kansans Can vision has 5 areas that are very exciting, and we're really looking forward to implementing them. But once again, thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions.
Our next candidate will be the Republican challenger, Mike Powell. Your opening remarks.
Yeah, I would also like to thank everyone for putting this on, the community college putting it on, and for our panel members and those that are watching. I think we're at a seminal moment in the future of our kids' education and their futures. Kansans Can is an exciting venture that our school system, our Department of Education, our Board of Education have started us on. And part of that is because it's led by teachers and led by educators. But part of the issue is that we're looking at that coming to fruition somewhere around 2026. And we have over 3,000 public schools, but only approximately 70 or so are engaged in this process. So we have the dilemma of not waiting for that to occur, not waiting for those changes to occur in 2026, that we are going to have to make efforts and inroads into some of the problem areas in the state. Yes, we have an 86% graduation rate, but that's 5,000 students. Those are kids every year that we are not graduating either into a job, a career, or into post-secondary education. 29% of those graduates are measured by the ACT as not fully college ready. So the issue is we have some challenges. And when I got my master's in adult education, one of my favorite subjects, because it showed so much about who we are as educators, was in the brain physiology. And what that taught me was, and that's where my passion is, early education is so important. Early learning is so important. And the pre-K preparation is so important. By the time a child is in the 3rd grade, that child will either transition to no longer learning to read, but reading to learn. And if the kid's not ready to do that, then we have a problem. So that's why I'm running for this office, is I want to be part of that. I'm ready to work for those kids. And yes, we may rank in the top 10, but this district is different. And I think it's time that we work toward that.
Okay. Now we'll turn to questions. First from Mary Rupert.
Thank you very much. What is the most important issue the state board will face this year?
We'll start with Mike Powell.
I think the most important issue is the one that is every year, and that is where are our kids and how are we going to prepare them to leave our K through 12 system and not just graduate, but be prepared to move into a successful career or into post-secondary education, basically to enter into a society as a constructive citizen. And that's always a challenge. But it's even more challenging as more demands are placed on our kids.
Okay. Your response, Janet?
Thank you. In my opinion, the most pressing problem we have right now is our teacher shortage. We currently have a teacher shortage throughout the state. Frankly, it's nationwide. And we also have a shortage of students entering the education programs to become teachers. So the state board has established a committee called a retention and recruitment committee to find teachers. They are working very hard, but we have a shortage this year, and our shortage grew from what we had this time last year. So to me, that's the most immediate problem we're facing, because we must have highly qualified teachers in our classrooms, and these kids just can't wait until we can get one in there. They're going to show up to school when school starts, so we must answer this question.
Elnora, your question?
Okay, thank you. And Wyandotte County recently completed a study for the health department for its certification, and it's the CHIP report, CHIP report. One of the barriers that's presented in the CHIP report was a barrier to education, to raise the median income, and education was cited. Within that, the language component was cited as something that needed to be drastically improved. And one of the benchmarks is to increase the proficiency of non-English speaking homes, to increase the proficiency to speak English. And that makes sense. However, I am seeing, and a lot of us are seeing, job ads that are requiring and asking for bilingual employees. It makes sense from a business point of view. My question is, what impact does the State Board of Education have on that particular issue? What impact do you have, and is it a consideration?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Janet.
Okay, thank you. Absolutely. It is absolutely a consideration by the state board. We have discussed this on various times. In fact, we are giving awards to students now who graduate and have mastered another language, because it's that important. Because let's face it, we're in a world today where we have so many, particularly in this area, we have so many Spanish-speaking people. But it's my understanding KCK has over 80 languages in their system. And so we must provide ESL to these students to become proficient in English. But I think it's extremely important that we encourage the students to take another language and become proficient in that. And that's, like I say, we do have an award that can be attached to a diploma stating that they are bilingual. And I think we need to really encourage this.
Mike, your response?
Yeah, I think that's critical, and I think it fails to recognize one of our greatest gifts we can give those kids. I mean, it's very powerful to be able to communicate in more than one language. It's very competitive. So there's a number of things that I think that the Board of Education can do better. And one of them is expanding that program or programs and grants. The other is that's awarded to enable kids to take the additional education. But I think the other thing is we have to relook our school system, and that's what Kansans Can allows us to do. You know, you can either look at it, well, these kids are behind, or you can look at it from the perspective of if we give them as additional skills, they'll not only be behind, but they will be ahead of other kids. So why are they shackled by either a 4-year or a 5-year degree program? I think we need to look more at where they should be graduating. So I think one of the things is relook what graduation requirements are. The other is to provide grants. And probably the most important is to educate people that this is a very powerful capability these kids bring when they graduate. It's competitive all over the world whenever you can negotiate or you can conduct business in more than one language. So I think we should be enabling it, and then there's a number of ways that I think the board could, improve our reach to those kids.
Okay, Daniel, your question?
Yes, thank you. With respects to partnership, what can the business community do a better job of in terms of partnering with the school board, with the education system?
Mike, your response?
Well, I think that's one of the things that the Board of Education should be moving toward and do well, and that's reach out to the larger state community. I think one of the things that business can do better is define their requirements. Because one of the things that Kansans Can allows us to do is start looking at what does a child want to do, not just what their aptitudes are, but what they want to do, and try to bring those together. Well, ultimately, we've got to marry that up with something that is rewarding and worthwhile and will provide a standard of living that that child deserves. Well, if we don't know what the requirements are, we don't know what the openings are, we don't know what the jobs are that haven't even been defined yet, it's kind of hard to build that program that supports that child to reach those goals. So I think the first thing is we've got to start communicating. And we've got to do a better job of forecasting what job next is going to be, not just job now, but what job next is going to be, so we can build our, it's a K through 12, that's 12 years. That's a long time to be building a kid. So I think we can work closer together to define that.
Janet, your response?
Thank you. That is exactly a piece of our new vision. The vision, we have, one of the pieces is an individual plan of study based upon career interests starting in middle school. We are encouraging this, and we're giving an assessment called career cruising, which isn't really a test. It's to find out what a child has an aptitude for and an interest in, to try to connect those and get the child going that way. Then we want to do job shadowing. We want kids going out into our businesses and see what's happening in them. We want businesses coming into our schools, even into our elementary schools, discussing what they do. Because when a child's in first grade, a lot of them want to be Superman or a basketball player, and we need to find out that they may have an interest in other fields. And I think it's really important that these kids are able to see and maybe shadow and go out and tour businesses. Businesses, though, should come in. We want a real partnership, and that is a piece of this new vision of Kansans Can. So I'm really, that's one of my favorite ones that we have, because so many children graduate high school and they have no idea what they want to do. And that's a shame, because if we can start back in middle school and find out what their passion is and push them toward that passion and show them what they're learning connects to that passion, what service, what wonderful, how great of employees will they be at that point?
Thank you.
Next question will be from Mary Rupert.
Thank you. I'm interested to find out if you have a position on consolidating school districts or on efforts to reduce districts' administrative costs.
Janet, your response?
Thank you. First of all, on school consolidation, when I got on the board, I was sitting there, I heard the question earlier, and I can't remember if the figure was 316 or 306. It was one of those when I got on the board that we had school districts in the state of Kansas. We currently have 286. Every one of those was by the districts coming to us and saying, we want to consolidate, we will consolidate. Now, so I think that's the way consolidation should be handled, because as was said previously, I have a real problem with a young child, particularly kindergarten, first, second grader, riding on a bus for an hour or more each way to school. I think that's just wrong. So we must look at that in those, particularly in western Kansas. Now, as far as the administration is concerned, I've heard a lot of debate on that, but the reality is I don't believe we are spending too much on administration. In fact, last year, the legislature did a study and said they found out that Kansas was one of the most efficient in the state as far as funding, as spending money. I mean, fact said we need lots more, and some of the legislators were not happy about that. And another thing is some districts, particularly small districts, that's what they talk about. Some of them are serving superintendents or superintendents of 2 or 3 districts. Some of superintendents are also the football coach and sometimes the bus driver. So they're combining programs. They're the principal of the school. I mean, so I think, quite frankly, that we don't have a heavy burden of administration.
Mike, your response?
Yeah, I think it's a great question from a number of perspectives. The first is when we say school consolidation, we need to break that out. It's not, one size does not fit all. When we talk about the western schools in the western districts, they are right now looking at whether or not they can consolidate some of their administrative burden. I mean, they recognize that more money needs to go to the classroom. They need to be focusing on what's happening to the kids. But there are some dynamics that I don't think we can ignore with you just say, well, we want to consolidate schools. One of them being is that school might be one of the major economic engines in that small community. And the second is that might be the community. If you go out to some of the smaller schools in particular, that school is the hub of everything. So it's not so much about consolidating, I don't think, buildings, as it is, if we're to look at anything, looking at efficiencies that make sense for the schools are decided by the local school districts that pour the right kind of money back into the classroom wherever it is. You know, it was just mentioned, we have a shortage of teachers. We may reach the point to where teachers might drive more of this than anything else. But I think we have to be very careful with that, and I think it's not one size fits all. We have to look at the school districts and make the right choice for the kids in that district.
Okay. Elnora, your question?
Okay, thank you. What type of partnerships does the State Board of Education form? For example, HUD has come out with something called the Envision program, Envision Centers. And these are educational centers for people who basically live or have received subsidies, housing subsidies. And as a measure of helping them to move off of that, they're teaching the children certain types of educational skills and so forth and so on. Do you partner at all with the federal programs in something like that and incorporate that into your the way that you do business?
Janet, your response?
We work with everyone, I think, on cooperating, and I guess to help our children, the biggest thing that we do will be this vision, as far as I'm concerned. But we work with every group we can work with. The federal government, anything that they have, we will certainly work with. Every program they have, we look at and see if it will fit Kansas. But no, I think that it's just an ongoing effort that we've always done. It's not something new for education. In fact, educators, we have cooperatives throughout the state, particularly for small districts that work together for purchasing, for programming, for so many things, for administration, and so there's so many different ways that we work. We reach out to all kinds of groups, that work with us. So yes, I think that we currently are doing this, and we constantly look for new ways to do it because we want to, first of all, provide the best education we possibly can for each student in this state, and most importantly, that we want to do this at a very efficient price. And frankly, that's what that study found out last year that we were doing.
Okay. Mike, your response?
Yeah, if I could broaden your question a little bit, because it covers a lot of ground. It's not just about education. It's not just about books in the classroom. We have a number of things where I think it shows that even though it's not necessarily at the Board of Education, it still has they have supervision. What's happening in the local school districts is a very powerful answer to your question. We have school resource officers now that are being brought into our schools to make sure that there is someone capable of providing immediate response and educate the kids too. They develop a relationship with the kids so that we break down barriers. But another area that I saw this week during the annual conference that I thought was, it's an issue in Leavenworth where I live, and that is that for teens, suicide is the #2 cause of death. While our schools are not necessarily the problem because it's a community issue, the schools play a huge role. And so a number of community health centers are trying to figure out ways to work with our local school boards and school districts to bring mental health professionals into the building. Because when they're not in the building, it creates a number of problems for dealing with issues that come up on a day-to-day basis. And then I think the third part goes back to what we've kind of talked about before and what Janet had mentioned before with Kansans Can, and that is to bring businesses and business leaders into our schools to help these kids see a vision for where they want to go. And I'll give you for instance, Kansans Can has a requirement in it that the teachers set aside time and they will mentor a group of students to help them decide where they want to go. Well, the problem with that is those teachers may have come right out of college. They might have been teachers their whole career, and it's kind of hard for them to say, well, we think you ought to be, welding's really great, or you want to be an engineer in the aerospace industry. It's hard to do that. So, but I think you're seeing that more and more as these leaders are coming into our schools, and that is, in fact, something the Board of Education is helping, and I think that's one of the things I was mentioning earlier that I see them needing to invest more and more is to help the schools bring these individuals in.
Daniel, your next question?
Yes. How do you go about balancing the needs of urban school districts versus rural school districts, those that are very populous versus those that are not?
Mike, your response?
That's why I think local school boards are so important. They know, they come from the community. They know as community leaders, they have a touch out in the community more than any state board of education could. But I think where you differentiate is where you see where the requirements are. And I'll give you, for instance, a small school might graduate, you get 53 kids graduating versus 22,000 kids in a school district. Might have 53 graduating. That superintendent ought to know everyone. They ought to have a great graduation rate. But then the question is, did they get access to the courses and classes they needed? They might want to be bilingual business person out, but did they have access to languages? Advanced math, advanced sciences, if they want to go on into more advanced degree programs in engineering. So that's something the local school board has to look at. Now, I think what the Board of Education can do and should do is be engaged, not to run the small school district or large school district, but to understand their challenges and understand the programs that they can bring into those schools in ways that it impacts them where their needs are, where they've defined their needs. And I think that's what the Board of Education needs to do more. We need to get down and understand our school districts like we never have before if we want Kansas Can to be successful.
Okay. Janet, your response?
Well, let's face it, we're from a metropolitan area. This is where I'm from. I'm from Wyandotte County. I grew up here. And I was very familiar with our school districts, here when I got elected. But since serving on the board so many years, I have become extremely knowledgeable about smaller school districts. We have school districts that have 200 students, K through 12. I mean, they simply cannot offer the opportunities that we can offer, which is kind of tragic. However, that's the bad news. The good news is they're able to do so much more today. And this is what's wonderful. They work, for instance, with other districts. Sometimes they share teachers. Teachers travel between these small districts to teach courses that they really, like physics, class courses like that. They'll travel between school districts. And then, of course, technology has been wonderful for schools, because now if they have a child that wants to learn Mandarin, they can learn it in a small 200 student school district because they can get online and do this. So this is ways that schools, you'd be amazed. And I tell you one thing schools do. Schools are not isolated. Everyone, we're just one big family. Everyone knows everyone. You'd be shocked. All the superintendents know each other, teachers know each other throughout the state, board members know each other, and we cross district lines. We know I've been all over this state, and I'm extremely knowledgeable about this, and I'm very proud of what's happening, but I think it's improved so much since I've been on the board, and frankly, the number one reason is technology.
Now we'll move to closing remarks, and we'll call on Janet first. You have 1 minute.
Okay, once again, thank you so much for having us here tonight. Am so honored and I feel privileged to have served this district for 20 years. I don't know whether you're aware of it or not, but this district covers all of Wyandotte, all of Leavenworth, eastern part of Douglas, and a piece of Johnson, and a little piece of Jefferson counties. And so, needless to say, I could be at anywhere in this district in 45 minutes, and I've been in every school and every district in this state, in this my district. You know, I've been to a lot more too, and I love visiting schools. And I know all my superintendents. I know most of the board members. I know many teachers and employees, other employees in all the districts. And I'm passionate, like I say, about what I do. I've basically committed my life to serving in education. I've been asked many times to run for other things, and frankly, I'm not interested. You know, I'm interested in kids because I know it's corny, but the reality, it's true. These classrooms are holding the future. They're sitting in our classrooms today, the future of this city, this county, this state, this nation, this world. And who knows what one of these kids may become, you know, and that's going to be because of what the type of education we're offering them. And I want to be a part of that, and I am so excited about this new vision because I did get to tell you all the things about it, but we have early childhood is extremely important in our new vision. Social emotional health is important. That's another piece of the vision. Graduation rates, and then post-secondary success, because no longer are we saying graduation is the end-all be-all. It's not. It is, we want to make sure that they're successful, that they have either got a certificate, a license. They don't have to go to college. They can go to the technicals and get a license or get an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. But that's what, when we're following the kids 5 years after they graduate from high school to make sure that they are successful, because that's the sign of success, not that diploma from high school. But thank you so much for having me, and I would appreciate your vote.
Mike?
Yeah, this is can either be in an exciting time where we are going to make the Kansas educational system the premier, not just in the nation, but in the world, and be world competitive, or we can squander that resource. That means that everyone, no matter what their, whether it's a local teacher in the building, or it's the State Board of Education, or even the legislators that were here before, we all have to be moving in the same direction, committed completely to this. It's truly a seminal moment in Kansas history. What that's going to require each of us to do, though, is to demand the same of our school board as we are demanding of our teachers, because that's one of my concerns, is that this change can put more demand on our teachers than ever before. So all of us are working hard, or all of us working that hard to make this a success. I'm excited about the future. I know it's going to be hard work, but even if we had the perfect system and started with a kindergarten today, it would be 12 years before we would know, or 14 years before we would know we're successful. So change is hard. It's going to be a long process, and I commit that no one will work harder for your kids at this table than I will to make that a reality. And so I look forward to November. I look forward more to being able to work for your kids after November the 6th. So thank you very much for your time and for giving us this opportunity.
Let's give the candidates a hand. We are adjourned.